just wanted to send out I want to figure out how to do it. Yeah, I can help you with that. Anything that is essential in our lives, like for example, if you put something in your random, you say, even before you finish doing it, it always is that it's not just producers and just like I would stay somewhere in there. It's very small. Yeah. There's a wine producer who has a beautiful hotel with a great osteria across the tracks that some people don't know about. It's a Barolo producer. That's why I'll send you some things. Oh my God. I'll help you. I have to pick your brain. Yeah. No. In the time that I lived in Rome, I experienced 3 different cheeses. So it's wonderful. Old Town smells like cheese. France. Yes. And then you get wonderful Polish cheeses and Norwegian goat cheeses and like the things you experience, like you're gonna find like all in one place, and it's just a great place for connection. Bucket list, it really is. I have to do it. Yeah, if you do, you really do. She's so sweet as you know.
Thank you everyone for coming out. This is a very exciting double header. I mean, we are celebrating Emily Weinstein's new book, but we are thrilled to have to Melissa Clark to join in the conversation because she's been a star in the bookstore for all these years, and now we can make Emily one too, right? Yeah. But so Emily Weinstein is the editor-in-chief of the New York Times Cooking and Food, including the New York Times Cooking app. And she's the author of the New York Times recipe newsletter, 5 Weeknight Dishes, which reaches millions of readers every week. And you can download the New York Times Cooking app or read more at nytcooking.com. Oops, am I going in and Catherine?
Yeah.
Catherine. And then we, as I said, and we're thrilled to have Melissa Clark join us tonight. She's a food writer and cookbook author and staff reporter for the New York Times Food section, where she writes the popular column A Good Appetite and has appeared in over 100 cooking videos. Wow, that's amazing. She's the author of the New York Times bestsellers Dinner in One and Dinner in French, as well as Dinner and Dinner in Instant. In the kitchen. But she's a winner of multiple James Beard and IACP awards, and Melissa earned an MFA in writing from Columbia, and her work has been selected for the Best American Food Writing. And she lives in Brooklyn with her husband and daughter. So, thank you both.
Amazing. All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming. So we are going to talk for about half an hour, and then we're going to let you guys ask us questions. So save your questions because we want to hear from you. And after that, we're going to be signing books. All of the books are pre-signed, but if you want them personalized, come and see us. So, all right. And we were like, who's going to lead the conversation? Because we're both journalists. We're like, we decided that we're just going to chat, and I'm going to kind of lead the conversation since it's Emily's book, and it's Emily's first book, and it's very. So how does that feel? Your first book? I mean, it's pretty exciting. You know, Melissa's written 45 books, and that's not like a joke I just made up. She's actually written 45 books. It's really fun. It's really fun. But the thing is, this book is really like an NYT cooking book. Like the recipes are from my amazing colleagues at NYT Cooking. Melissa, of course, is a key one of those colleagues. We're longtime friends and coworkers. But it's just really fun. So many people have been turning out to talk to us about the recipes in the book.
the recipes on NYT Cooking, which ones they cooked, what they did to change it, did it turn out, they had it for dinner on Wednesday, and I love that because I am also, obviously I'm the editor of NYT Cooking, but I'm a cooking super fan. So a lot of the time I have made the recipe too, and I'm like, oh my god, me too, I love that recipe. so this has all been really fun.
And so, how did you decide which recipes are going to go in the book? Because we have thousands and thousands of recipes at MIT Cooking, and this book is 100 weeknight recipes. What was your criteria for weeknight, and how did you decide amongst all your darlings that these were the 100?
Yeah, we could have made multiple cookbooks, each with 100 recipes, and the 100 recipes different every time. I really believe that. We have so many. About 5-6 years ago, we started in earnest. We'd always publish this kind of work, and then we realized that there was this real reader need for this kind of work, we wanted to meet that need, right? What are we doing if we're not meeting people seeing this? We're journalists, we work in cooking, right? So for this book, though, we were looking for recipes that pretty much meet the criteria that I use for my weekly newsletter. Not a ton of ingredients, as few steps as possible. 2 pieces of equipment, like 2 pieces of big equipment. So that can be like a pot and a pan, or a pot and a blender, because cleaning up is also part of the cooking process. And I'm not sure we've helped you if we've given you like a 30-minute recipe, but you have to clean for 4 times. So and that's how we think about it. And also, I will say in this book in particular, I was looking for recipes in our catalog that have that kind of light bulb moment, like the aha moment where there's something interesting or a little bit different, the kind of thing that I think makes NYT Cooking different.
And are they all 5-star recipes, or did you let some 4-star winners in there too? I never know. Why is that a 5 and I want a 4?
I know, one of the mysteries of NYT Cooking is there are a lot of 4-star recipes. Well, how do you get to be 5? There are 4-star recipes in the book. A lot of my favorite recipes are 4-star recipes.
Me too.
I think sometimes people rate things like, oh, I didn't like it. I'm like, well, is it good? But yes, but they're all 4- and 5-star recipes, certainly.
Yes.
And their recipes, I think, are great. I would never give you a book of recipes I didn't think were great.
And you obviously haven't made all of them, but do you think you've made like half, or? So I feel like you cook from this all the time. I know you're always cooking the recipes, so.
I know, it keeps me closer to our writers. And also, it might not surprise you to learn that NYT Cooking is populated with writers who I love. So I am cooking all the time. I've definitely made more than half. I've probably made 3/4 at least. I think there are very few I have not actually made in my kitchen. And the ones I haven't made, I've eaten out in the world. Like somebody else has made it, or I've had it at our studio kitchen. I get around to most of the recipes, yeah.
And of all of the recipes, which one, or a couple if you want to name a few, do you think that, are your favorites for just when you and your husband, Blake, who's here, are having dinner by yourself, a non-kid dinner? What's your favorite recipes for a non-kid dinner? Then I'm going to ask which are your favorites for kid dinner. We'll start off with grown-up dinner.
When our kids are not eating with us, we're eating spicy. Yeah. Our kids are not yet at a place where they want chilies. And even now, things like if there's too much ginger, they'll be like, spicy! They don't like that. So, anything with chilies, really. Anything with kimchi. There's a really wonderful kimchi fried rice recipe in this book. That's delicious. Love that recipe.
You love that recipe.
Make it a lot. Yes. Yeah, I'm with my people.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because one of the recipes we make the most is actually a recipe that kids would love, just maybe not my kids. And it's a gnocchi recipe where you toast the gnocchi in a pan, and then you take out the gnocchi and you make a quick tomato sauce with burst cherry tomatoes, and then you pop it back in the oven with mozzarella.
Yeah, what kid doesn't like that?
I know.
Is it the texture thing on the
They
gnocchi?
don't like tomatoes. They're suspicious of tomatoes. They don't get them, and they don't want them, and which is crazy because I think a lot of the best kid food has some sort of
Wait,
tomato
what about
sauce.
pizza?
They will eat pizza.
Okay.
They will eat
All
pizza.
right. So they're practically there.
Yeah, I don't know. We should sit down and ask them about this.
Yeah,
We
okay.
should-
We'll bring next time, bring that up. Like, yeah, why? Her kids are 7 and
4.5.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, that time. Okay, so what are their favorite recipes? What do they love from this book?
So there is a chicken recipe in this book that that they will eat. I'm being really real with you guys. There's a chicken recipe with breadcrumbs and mustard, but you can make it with mayo. They don't have to know mayo's in it. Make it with mayo, and then it's a little less spicy if you use mayo. They like that. I mean, they'll eat simple pasta, or you can actually just make whatever pasta you want, and then literally put aside plain noodles, and they will eat that. They eat fried rice.
Without the kimchi.
Without the kimchi, yeah, they eat kimchi-less fried rice.
Right, which is still good.
Yes, and they eat chicken. I mean, they're good chicken eaters, and they eat salmon, and there are a bunch of salmon recipes in this book too. I just, when I'm cooking for them, a lot of times what I'll do, and I think a lot of parents do this or really ought to do this, it's very easy to cook everything at the same time, but one thing to be more simply seasoned than everything else, or it just doesn't get the sauce. And we do a fair amount of that too, and hopefully it's like a gateway.
Yeah.
They'll be curious, and we do see that with our older daughter. She's a way more voracious, curious eater.
Do you ever just, and this is what I'm asking this because this is what I did, do you ever just make dinner and just give them a hot dog if they want it? Is it, am I the only one who does it? I would make dinner, and if my daughter is now 16, she's still very picky, by the way. But when on days she would make dinner, she's like, so there's a hot dog in the freezer, and I'm gonna put it in the microwave for you. And
We do, but we try not to.
no, I know. Okay,
We really try. I'm not sure.
You're not
it's
the only one,
amazing
Melissa.
Parenting. It's more like a battle of wills, but we really try not to. But we do sometimes, and we try to do that when there are other people around, so they don't have to be party to the whole brokering of who eats what. It's just this don't do that with your friends around if you can avoid it. We do it if close friends are around, then it's like, okay, they can see this, but otherwise it's like,
Yeah, I can tell you that Dahlia started out really picky, and at age 16, she's eating she'll eat cooked vegetables now, not just raw vegetables.
Wow.
This is a big, yes, cooked tomatoes, cooked things, so it will get better. Okay, so moving on so this book is really the simplest recipes we have for people who love to cook. It's not dumbed down. They're recipes that we love to cook. But as far as technique goes, what are some of the techniques in this book that you think are really helpful for people, like takeaway techniques? And I know we talked about this the other day, and one thing that I said, I think is a great takeaway. It can be technique or equipment, because I feel like that's part of what makes your life easy as a cook is having the right equipment. And so for me, my answer is the microplane. That everybody needs to go out and get a $15 microplane or a rasp grater and just use it for all of your garlic and all of your ginger and all of your citrus zest, and then throw it in the dishwasher. It is just, and it's very lightweight. It's not a big thing. So that's mine. And do you have one, like a secret technique or a secret piece of equipment that's like, okay, this is going to that makes your life easier, that's going to make everyone else's life easier?
I have multiple microplane graters, and I do endorse the microplane grater. I don't have I have a ton of kitchen stuff. I don't know if I have anything so secret.
Yeah.
And I think honestly the best thing you can do as a cook if you want to get dinner out there faster, if you want to feel less frustrated, if you want to just zip through a recipe, is just have a sharp knife. Have a decent chef's knife, and make sure it's not dull, and you'll just zip through everything. And this is maybe this will even sound silly. I've noticed that a lot of times, I used to have this too, people only have small cutting boards. And a small cutting board makes it really hard to chop things quickly. These are just simple things. You can probably get them, the cutting board you can get at a hardware store, right? They're just simple things you can do to set yourself up a little better. I have a bunch of Pyrex prep bowls So they're just tiny glass bowls, and I use them all the time if I'm chopping things, there's something simmering, I want to chop something else, like it gets it out of the way. I guess this is all in the spirit of like keeping your station clean. I don't know if anyone's watched The Bear. This is like sort of one of the rules of a professional kitchen, is you want to keep yourself organized, you want to keep your station clean. That's how I think about it. Also, I think for NYT Cooking, we've developed a reputation for evangelizing for the sheet pan. There are many sheet pan recipes in this book.
I was an early adopter.
You were one of the first,
Yeah.
I think. You were one of the first.
I got right in there.
And this really is like an amazing tool that costs less than $20.
Yes.
And this is the thing that lets you cook everything at once on one pan. Sometimes you can do the whole meal on the pan. Like you don't have to do anything else on the pan. And sorry.
No, sheet pan, I feel like the sheet pan is something that I should have said, because, but here's something I've learned about sheet pans. And this is a new thing, which I'm breaking news. You can buy stainless steel ones that can go in the dishwasher, and they are so much better than the aluminum ones that you have to wash by hand. So this is my new, I know, stainless steel sheet pan in the dishwasher. It's just, and you get them in a bunch of different sizes. So you have the big ones, the little, you can buy them like on Amazon. I think it's $25. You get 3 sheet pans of different sizes, stainless steel. They all go in the dishwasher, because washing aluminum sheet pans in the sink when they're really greasy is a pain.
It is a pain.
It's a pain. Parchment paper helps, but it doesn't, the grease still gets in there. It does help, but it doesn't eliminate. So, anyway, sorry, that's just my big, I'm like, I need to talk more about the stainless steel sheet pans.
I know, I feel like you're going to text everyone the link.
I know, I'm going to be sorry, I don't mean to do that commercial break there, but it's helpful, right?
It is helpful. It's incredibly helpful. Look, there are like you don't need fancy equipment to cook.
Right.
You just don't. You do need like kind of a thoughtfully curated small set of things. And I would argue it includes like the right size cutting board, like a sharp knife, microplane grater. Add that to the list, and like a good sized pan too. Like I think sometimes people only have small pans, and it's like, oh, it's like a lot in there. You really want your stuff to spread out a little bit.
Yeah, very true. And a skillet that has a grip on the other side. Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
That's like a really, the other day I used a skillet that I hadn't used in a while, and it didn't have a grip on the other side, and it was full of stuff. It's like, why do they make them? So I'm gonna get rid of that one. Okay, here's a question for you, which I actually don't know the answer to. So, NYT Cooking has just had its 10th anniversary, and Emily has been there from the beginning, shepherding but before you started working for food at the New York Times, it was, I guess, the dining section back when you started, right?
Yeah.
Did you cook before that, or did you learn how to cook as you kind of matured through the ranks of cooking? What was your pre-New York Times cooking cook life like?
So I worked at the Times, like I was at the Times years before we even launched cooking. So the answer is sort of yes and no. Like by the time we launched cooking, I fully knew how to cook. But I started working at the Times in 2007, and I had no idea I would still work there now. It's really wild, actually. I was really young. I started at the Times, and I got this like freelance job working for what was then called the dining section. And I mostly got the job because of my interest in restaurants. I knew a lot about restaurants. I was interested in that kind of journalism. I had just finished graduate school, and then I got there, and one of the first assignments they gave me was to run a blog written by Mark Goodman. Mark Goodman, how to cook everything. So Mark was at that point a writer at the Times, and so I started working on that, and I was like, oh my God, I work at the dining section at the Times. I need to learn how to cook. This is so embarrassing. And I'd always loved food. I had cookbooks. I would read the cookbooks, but I couldn't actually really cook. And that was the moment I really started cooking in earnest. And I picked recipes that were like totally inappropriate for a beginner. And I would invite people over for dinner. I'd tell them to come at like 7:30 or 8, and then we could eat at like 11. So anything, I couldn't manage anything. But you know, you really do cook enough. If you cook enough, you will learn. And I was also, of course, fortunate to, I had colleagues at the office I could talk to and ask questions of, and they would recommend cookbooks. You know, part of the reason I love recipes, sincerely, is I believe in them. They're sort of like they really are a roadmap, right? And for me, each recipe is a roadmap, but you know, I wanted to learn to cook. I just like followed the map, and I still love cooking. I really do love to cook.
Who's the alpha cook in your house? Is it you or is it Blake, your husband? I know he cooks too.
Yeah, it is me.
Do you agree with that? Or is it-
You know, people often assume my husband can't cook. My husband Blake is wonderful, which is not true. He can cook, and he has a lot of opinions about NYT cooking recipes, which is so gratifying for me after hours. No, my husband genuinely is so wonderful, and I think part of the reason, honestly, I cook a lot is because I don't really like to clean. I will clean. I don't want there to be dirty dishes in the sink. But Blake, a very good-natured, good sport, does the cleaning. And so that is the equitable split in our relationship. I plan the meals, I make the grocery list, I do the shopping, and he steps in and cleans and makes it all beautiful. So.
When I first married, when I was getting to know my husband, before we got married, he liked to cook. And he liked to have dinner parties like you described. He would invite me over at 8. And we'd eat at midnight, because he'd be like, okay, I'm starting with tagine. I'm like, okay. And, but then, you know, slowly into our relationship, he's like, you know, I'm gonna do bread. You do everything, I'm gonna do bread. And he found like the thing that is just his. He doesn't want me near his sourdough starter. Anyway, you know, but we've sort of divided and conquered, and so I do all the cooking, he does it, but he makes the bread, so it works.
Hey, it works.
Yeah,
it works. No, and my husband really is wonderful, and
Okay, let's talk about the holidays, which are coming up. So can you believe that it's going to, Halloween, but then Thanksgiving is right there. Thanksgiving is really big in our part of the world. It's a big thing.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so we already shot it, done it, it's all wrapped. But so for you have overseen so many Thanksgivings at NYT Cooking. We have, every year we try to do something different, try to do something better. It's hard to think of something new every single year. So having lived through all of that, what is your fantasy Thanksgiving? Like, what would you make for your, not that you would do this necessarily, but just like a fantasy Thanksgiving menu? What are all the things?
What I would cook or what I would do?
No, what would you do? All right, tell me what I want to know what you would do.
I would go to a restaurant.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Thanksgiving at home, and it's fun. I actually do. I went through a long phase where I cooked every Thanksgiving, and I love that too. And if you love to cook, Thanksgiving is like the marathon, right? You're like training for the marathon. You run the marathon. When I first took over cooking Thanksgiving for a while, I plan the menu, I really think about it, and then I would make like a multi-day plan, basically, like a battle plan of like what I was cooking in what order and what had to happen when. A few things have to happen at a specific moment, like defrosting and seasoning the turkey, for instance, and then ultimately cooking the turkey, stuff like that. And I would like take it up on the cabinets in the kitchen, and I'd like be in the kitchen, and I'd have like a headband, and like stretching, and I loved it. That was fun for me, I loved it. And then, and I will do that again. I'm positive I will do that again. But one of our colleagues actually was telling me how they went to like a steakhouse for Thanksgiving. I don't eat a ton of steak, but I really like it. And I was like, oh, what if we went to like Keen's, in Manhattan, and we had like a steak and like mashed potatoes.
Oh, and you could do the parade
spinach.
with the girls first?
Yeah.
I like this plan.
Yes, my children do eat steak. They do eat steak. So, yes. No, but I do love Thanksgiving, and every year I do get excited thinking about what I'm going to cook, even if you know, I think last year was the first year in years I didn't cook Thanksgiving.
What did you do?
We went to visit my husband's family,
Okay.
and we actually did cook there. It was a really cool setup. His aunt and uncle have a very big kitchen where they live, and they have an adult daughter, and she came with a ton of her friends. They're all about like 28, 29, 30, and everybody got a job. Like everybody was handed a recipe and told they had to cook it.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, and
Oh,
it was
that's
great.
great. We do. We should write. We should cover that. Like do something like
It
that.
was fun. It was fun, and they were cooking 2 turkeys, and it's California, so it was really beautiful grilling weather. And so that morning they were like, "How about you grill one of the turkeys?" And I was like, "Okay." So
Did you
that's what I did.
spatchcock it?
Yeah, I spatchcocked it, and I mean, if I were so spatchcocking is, you know, we do with chicken stew. You cut out the backbone and you flatten it so it cooks faster and more evenly. So normally I would ask a butcher to do that. So I was there with the turkey, like. But this particular couple, they're very passionate cooks, so they had like the sharp knife. So I spatchcocked it, I grilled it on like a Weber grill, and it was awesome, and it was done incredibly quickly. It was great.
That's so funny because that was exactly my experience Thanksgiving this year. We went to with friends, and we realized that we had 2 turkeys, and we were going to spatchcock both of them, both roasted in the oven. We realized they weren't going to fit both of them in the oven, so we did one on the grill, like at the last minute, and it was great. So highly recommend spatchcock turkey on the grill. Do you feel like this year, obviously November, there's an election. People are having feelings. Do you feel like Thanksgiving is going to be different? Well, I know it's a hard question, but I've been thinking that too. I'm like, well, how should we make it different? Like, is there something we should do? Is like, should we make extra pie? Should we make extra cakes or something?
You mean different, like actually celebrating the holiday, or different in how we produce our work to help people celebrate the holiday?
Well, no, not that, because I know we're sort of figuring that out. But
Yes.
yeah, we're figuring that out. But no, just I mean, just like personally, like I've been thinking like this year, I'm like, I think I want to like. I feel like I want to go big on the sweets. I feel like it's like all about like 10 desserts this year or something. I'm not sure. I'm just like thinking about like how I'm going to approach it. So I was wondering if you had thoughts.
I think there's like a decent chance the vibes are going to be really weird this year in November. A lot is happening in the world. I think comfort foods, sweets. Like, I don't think it's the year to like go crazy sideways on your Thanksgiving menu. Like I would just this year, if I were cooking it, I would play the hits. I would do things that everybody loves.
Yeah.
And then like make an extra pie. I think it's a fine idea.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then leading up into, so then we've got Christmas, we've got Hanukkah, we've got all of those things. Thanksgiving is much bigger for us than all the other holidays. Like it is the big thing.
Yeah.
And we don't even, do we have our Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa? We don't have it even planned yet, do we?
Well, we're working on it. We're working on it. Yeah. We're real good.
But the thing that we do, the second biggest thing is Cookie Week for us. So Cookie Week is because, can you tell that I have a giant sweet tooth? Cookie Week is a big part of what we do, and this year is very exciting. Can you just talk just give them a little teaser about Cookie Week, because Cookie Week is big.
Sure. So this is something we started doing a few years ago at MIT Cooking, and it's like taken on a life of its own. We on our YouTube channel, we have a different video each day, a different cookie from a different really wonderful recipe developer. And it's like a thing now. We have merch. People get really into it. They make all the cookies, they post them on Instagram. We have a pop-up newsletter. But it's really wonderful. It's really an acknowledgement of the fact that people get attached to recipes because of the people behind them. You know, people really love these videos. They really love seeing you every year. Eric Kim, who's a wonderful recipe developer, a member of our team who has a lot of recipes in this book too. I don't know. It feels like a holiday tradition now for us, which is nice.
Which leads me to my next question, which is we have more books coming out. This is the first of a series, so there are going to be more New York Times books coming. And the one that I'm looking forward to the most is the cookie book. So yes. So but you want to? So there's going to be a cookie book that comes out in a year, maybe, or when does it come out?
Yes.
What are? Do you want? You can talk about some other, like what are other titles are I mean, wait, is this secret information? Are we allowed to talk? Am I allowed to ask
Yes,
a
I
question?
got the thumbs up. Okay, good. Can I also say Caitlin Roper is here? So Caitlin Roper is the brilliant editor of the Times who led this project and a Montclair resident also. Yes. So yes, Caitlin is giving me the green light. Yes. So we have a cookie book coming out next year, very much like this one, but all cookies.
Yeah, 100 of our best cookies. That's really exciting.
Yes, and it's going to be really fun. And I actually just like a week or two ago looked at the list of recipes for the book, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. It's going to be really good. And then after that, we have a vegetarian cookbook coming out as well.
And do you think you do another weeknight? I mean, a follow-up to, because I mean, think about it. So in 2 years, we will have had, how many recipes do we do a month?
Oh my God, 100.
A month, right? So in 2 years, when it's time to come out with another, with maybe a follow-up, there's going to be a whole new selection of recipes.
That would be amazing. I have to say there are a lot of cuts you could make at the cooking catalog. Like there are a lot of different possible cookbooks floating around in there. But of course that would be wonderful, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Okay, I think that's all my questions. I'm going to make sure I ask it, because then we're going to open it up to you guys. Oh, you have a series? Yeah, that is it. Are you ready to ask your questions? And how do we do it with a mic?
I'll pass it out.
Okay, so take, I'll call on people, but Emily will answer.
Yeah, well, if you'd like.
Or, yeah.
questions, maybe you'll have to.
Yeah, we can share.
Okay. Oh, right, first one, yeah.
Hi, you talked a little bit about creating recipes, and I was wondering if you could talk about the process, your creative process to come up with a new recipe.
So, yeah, we talked about this, the other day we did an event together, we were talking about the process, and what was so interesting to me is that I was on stage with Eric Kim, who's a recipe developer also. He and I have like pretty different processes, so I'll tell you how I do it, but I can't tell you, I can't speak in general. I keep a notebook in my kitchen, and I will be cooking dinner, and I'll just be making, when I'm cooking dinner, I'm not measuring, I'm not developing, I'm just like, ooh, what do I want to eat, and what's in the fridge? And whenever something comes out well, my husband says, write it down right now. And because I will forget. And then that is the beginning of the recipe. And so from that chicken scratch, which I've written after I've cooked, after we've eaten, after I've had my wine, so it's like, and then I will type that up, and that'll be the beginning of the recipe, and then I will test it and then put it through its paces. So that's my favorite way to come up with a recipe. It's just like this organic thing. But then there'll be times when one of my editors, Emily, or I have worked with other editors, will say, okay, you need more chicken. You need chicken, and it's going to be for January. So then I will start thinking about chicken in January, and I will imagine what I'll be hungry for in January. You work about 3 months ahead. So those are the two ways. And but I'm always trying to start with what I want to eat.
I find the recipes wonderful. Hello, Emily. And I've made a lot of these in the book, but when I see them online, I love to look at the notes because I like to, I never follow a recipe. Well, I actually follow a recipe. But the funniest notes are the ones where people change things. And then they, then you have a comment that someone says, why did you even use this recipe? Do you have any favorite notes that you've had?
Oh, yes.
That would be a book.
Yes. Well, a column. I find those comments very funny. The ones where it's like, I used salt instead of sugar. I used like wrapping paper instead of beef. There is a very famous NYT cooking comment, and NYT cooking comments have like a fan community online. Like there's an Instagram account devoted to our comment section, which I love. I really genuinely love this. There is a famous note, a comment a woman put on a recipe. The recipe is called Katharine Hepburn brownies, and this is actually quite. This recipe was published a bunch of other places decades before it was ever even in the Times, and it was for Katharine Hepburn's real brownie recipe. And so the comment is like, I used to make this recipe all the time. A friend of mine who lived in Germany, she asked me for the recipe. I sent it to her, she couldn't get it to work, I couldn't understand why, it's such a simple recipe. And then she came over to visit, and she stole my husband. And every time I'm like, and like, she has been interviewed. I only found out recently when we were talking about the 10th anniversary and looking through some of the best comments. Like, she has been on like Inside Edition. Sorry. She's happily married to the love of her life now, by the way. And we don't know about her ex-husband and that terrible woman who couldn't get the rounds right.
I have a question about your tips for cooking for one. Like, I think one of the things that I struggle with is I find a recipe that I really am excited to make, and then there's like the inevitable sour cream container that's 3/4 full, sits in my fridge for a week and a half, and then gets thrown out. So like, what are some of the tips to keep in mind for those ingredients you're buying for particular recipes, but you're struggling to use, especially if you're scaling those recipes down?
I have a few thoughts, and I'll pass to you. This is a great question, and we actually get this a lot. And we get a lot of feedback that people want more recipes for 1 and 2. Our standard recipe size is for 4 people. And that's pretty common in cookbooks, is you scale for 4 people. It's a convention. I think that the freezer is actually your friend, both for the ingredients and what you cook. I'm often making food where I know I'm making the full recipe, but maybe it's just me and Blake, and so I try to be really mindful of picking things that I know, like without a doubt, I can repurpose into a lunch or can go in the freezer. And then label the things in your freezer, I would say. But there are a lot of recipes, you know, especially if you buy like a few different size pans, like a ton of the recipes in the book will work, especially where it's something sort of discrete. It's like salmon, and of course you don't need the 4 pieces of salmon. You can just do 1 in a much smaller pan, and then the extra sauce that goes with it will like keep in the fridge for a really long time. So I think it's about sort of like strategic selection, right? And then like having a plan for what happens after the fact.
Yeah, no, and that's great advice. I would say, you know, the dairy products are a thing. Like, I often have like leftover sour cream. I mean, yogurt I eat on stuff, but I'm not going to eat sour cream on stuff if you bake with it. Or leftover ricotta cheese is another thing. And so what I do, I'm very purposeful. Like, I'm going to say something, you're going to be like, of course you said that. I bake something, like I love to bake a pound cake or muffins, and I'll use up that extra dairy product, and I put those in the freezer. Because those freeze better than, you can freeze dairy products, but they don't freeze that well. But ricotta muffins or like a little cheesecake will freeze really, really well. And then that's just a delight to have in your freezer. Obviously I do.
Where are the New York Times test kitchens? And the videos of you in Nighttime Cooking, are they sometimes in your home, or are they always in the...
Yeah, so for years, they were in my home. Yeah, and so, which was, it's really, my kitchen is a lot smaller than it looks, so the camera guy was always, or camera gal, depending on, was always like stuck against the cabinet, couldn't move. So we finally got this big, beautiful studio kitchen in Midtown, walking distance from the office, and so now we shoot there, and it's so much better. It's so beautiful. We're really lucky.
Yeah. And as for so a test kitchen, so this beautiful space we have in Midtown is just a studio. And it's a studio, and it has 2 kitchens in it, but every day now we're shooting video, and we shoot all our photography there as well. So we don't actually have people there working on the recipes, like developing them and testing them and tasting them. That work doesn't happen there. That work happens the way it has like forever, which is it just happens in people's homes. So our recipe writers, our columnists like Melissa, they're all working at home on their home stoves. It's the same type of stuff everybody has. And then it goes out to testers, our recipe testers, who they make the recipe. They make sure, of course, there are no missing steps. They make sure it makes sense. You know, they'll tell us if it doesn't work, and we'll make adjustments. And they're also cooking on regular stoves. And what's nice about that is if you're in a test kitchen, like a professional test kitchen, all that equipment is really like calibrated. It's more powerful often than what home cooks really have. So our recipes are actually tested on the equipment that most people have.
And that's a big, important point that we make a lot, that our recipes are developed in home kitchens, for home kitchens. They're not, it's important also because you have one person doing the work, right? You don't have a team, you don't have someone cleaning up, like, a lot of professional test kitchens in magazines have teams, and they have, cleaners, and we don't, so we're all working on, and so that, I think, is why, part of the reason why I think people respond to our recipes really well is because we're doing it like you're doing it. I mean, we might be a little bit faster with the chopping, but it's not that, there's not a huge gulf.
A question back here.
So it's interesting that you answered sort of half my question. You're such a wonderful collection of writers, and I really enjoy all the personalities, and I'm just wondering, do you ever have a chance to get together as a group?
We do, especially the writers who are on staff. These are our colleagues at the office, and most of the team is based in the New York area. So yeah, even every Wednesday at the office, now we're hybrid. So people work from home a few days, they go to the office in Midtown a few days, and Wednesday is really the day everybody's there. So you look around the room, and there's Melissa and Eric and a bunch of people whose names you might not know right away, but if you saw their writing, you saw their byline, you would know exactly who they are, and it's great. It's a great group.
One last question.
Hi. You were talking a little bit before about the universe of kind of tools you need and that you don't need as much as you think. And I wonder how you think about the universe of ingredients in a similar way, both at home and then also for the cookbook, like when you were picking recipes. Were you thinking about like, would everybody have this in their home? Like,
Yes, definitely. And Melissa should speak to this too. Because I think you really think about this all the time when you're creating recipes. And you have an amazing pantry, as a lot of you professionals do. It's really important to make a book that'll be useful everywhere in the United States, that you keep an eye on using ingredients that are available everywhere. And so I can't think of an ingredient in this book that you couldn't find at a major supermarket. And not just in the middle of a city like New York. I mean, like out there, We really try to keep an eye on that. We don't want you to have to order an ingredient online to make a 20-minute dinner. And then in terms of a pantry, I mean, there really is so much you could do with a limited, pantry. One of the writers we work with a lot, Ali Slagle, who has 20 recipes in this book. And if you cook a lot, I hope you know her name because she is a genius for this kind of cooking. She's remarkable. She has a Substack newsletter called 40 Ingredients Forever. And she asks people what if they could only cook with 40 ingredients in their fridge, freezer, pantry, what would those be? And you go through I did this week for the occasion of the book, and that's not nothing 40, but the list fills up pretty fast. I was like up late, like what about chickpeas? And yes, I actually cheated. I put beans. Parentheses, I put like several kinds of bean, but nobody called me out. So that's fine. But yeah, it was an interesting exercise. I was like, oh yeah, you could eat well for a really long time with a very finite number of ingredients. And what she actually does is she takes that list of ingredients and she creates 3 new recipes. They're all short, and she puts them in the newsletter. And I didn't see them ahead of the newsletter going out, and I saw them, and I was like, these all sound so delicious, which makes total sense because I chose the ingredients. But it's amazing. It really is great.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add to that is just pick the things you love and make those your staples. Like, if you don't love something, don't buy it. Like, there's always a way to substitute, Like, so many of the recipes, and we give substitutions as often as we can. Like, if you're not into harissa, you can probably use kimchi instead. Like, there's always ways So just think about what you want and feel free to change the recipe because you're making dinner for yourself. So just don't, really focus in on your love in the pantry.
This has been so great. Thank you both so much. Actually having the dishes. Next best thing is books. So most of Emily's books are pre-signed, but she will personalize. Excuse me, and Melissa's books also are on the round table in the back, so we should have a nice selection of your books. So please come up and Melissa will personalize as well. Thank you all for coming. We so appreciate your support throughout the year. Thank you.
Thank you.